The following is a sports narrative special presentation.
And the pick is finally in. It's currently being brandished by some walkie-talkie individual, taking it up to the commissioner's podium. A big, humongous pick.
Now, to find out whose name is on that card, here is the commissioner, ready to make history.
With the first pick.
And welcome to the return of the show that we call the Draft Narrative here, presented by the 24 Media. I am your host, Jeff Bowers, and I will have a co-host along in just a moment. But in the meantime, we're going to bring you a little bit of a presentation, a weekly presentation about the NFL Draft in our big lead up with the 24 Media and Abundant TV of broadcasting the draft for you live from Detroit. We're very excited about it. This is just a little bit of build up, so by the time we get to Detroit, you will feel very comfortable with what all the proceedings that are going to be going on, man. And I'm really excited about it. It's going to be fun. So this will be your weekly home. Please feel free to send us any questions, comments, concerns you have about the draft or anything that implies. They're at Sports Narrative on the X, or of course you can reach out to us. We are thesportsnarrative@gmail.com if you want to send an email, or you can find us on youtube.com/thesportsnarrative because branding. So that is what we have for you. And this weekly show, the little draft narrative that we do, is going to be a weekly show where I bring on one of my draft co-hosts, in fact, and we will just trying to chop it up a little bit. It's not going to be real deep dive nerdy stuff about the draft itself. It's actually just going to be conversations. So each week we will present 3 topics. We'll chop it up a little bit, and we'll get out of your hair. So that is what we have in store for you, so I hope you enjoy. And, of course, you don't want to hear me ramble on for 45 minutes, so I will bring on my co-host, wrapped in his blanket, trying to keep warm, the great Jarett Alarde. What's up, buddy?
What's going on, man?
Man, it's you're going on, and there you are at New York Jets 778. We are a couple of nerdy Jets fans, but we talk about all of the teams in this lovely process. So I think you'll find our bias is kept to a minimum. At least I hope.
It all depends on you.
Well, that is true. As do most things with this here, I guess. Here, let's flip spots here, so you can be there on the left. All right. Well, without further ado, let's talk some draft, my friend. And what is your first topic of 3 topics that we will discuss? Throw it out there, buddy.
So the first one I want to talk about, especially in the draft, is I see the most interesting division in the draft is going to be the AFC East.
Okay.
Because you have a lot of needs. 2 of them are needs quarterbacks, which are going to be the Patriots. They're going to be the Jets. Because the Jets have Aaron Rodgers, but they still need a backup quarterback. The other thing is you've got a lot of issues that may be coming along with the Buffalo Bills. Buffalo Bills are going to need a receiver. They're not high enough up to get one of those top receivers. Then you end up with the Dolphins, and they're going to lose some casualties due to salary cap. And that's really going to hurt their defense. So we've got a lot of teams there that we have no clue. We have a clue, but we really don't have a clue where they're going. Because the Patriots, they're up in the air. They need a quarterback really bad, but they also need a receiver. And at their spot, you can get something like a Marvin Harrison Jr. Now, did you give up a quarterback for that kind of caliber receiver?
Mm-hmm.
That's a question for you, Jeff. What do you think about that?
Okay. Well, man, a lot to chew on there. So let's start with let's start with the teams as a whole. So you're right. I think that when we talk about windows, right? We talk about teams that their window to win. Well, obviously, mentioning the Jets, the window is 2 years, right? You got Aaron Rodgers. You need to get a bridge. Obviously, we're jettisoning Zach Wilson, so you're going to need a bridge quarterback there at some point. However, in the meantime, I think it is definitely the idea of saying you got 2 years to win. It's kind of an all-in year. We've heard that term all in. And so yeah, I 100% agree with that. Secondarily to that, I would say is the window for the other teams, right? So we talk about Buffalo, and Buffalo, that defense is getting a little bit older, and I think they're going to lose some key pieces. They're also currently sitting with a minus $51 million on the cap. Now, obviously, cap money is all just silly, and they'll probably rework Josh Allen. If they
Right.
Stephon Diggs will probably hit the bricks at his $27 million hit. All that.
But that leaves them with a position. They're running. They don't have a receiver now.
Well, and that's the point, right? So they kind of went all in for this window here. These last 2 years fell short, and now it's like, okay, well, now what do we do, right? So I think they're at a point where they're retooling, but also they're having to make some tough decisions. So then you have the Dolphins, and the Dolphins are a team that are going to have to. Obviously, the first thing they got to do is make the decision on Tua. And whether you're going to pay him, $55 million a year as a top flight quarterback, because that's what it seems like he's actually, according to our good friends at Sport Track, the average market value for him is $50.5 million.
Yeah.
You've also got Jalen Waddle, who's going to be coming up soon. You've got Christian Wilkins, who apparently they're going to let walk, as well as Connor Williams, the center that they had last year. And, man, when he was out, the Dolphins super struggled. So now you're looking at replacing center. And, in fact, most mock drafts that you see, in fact, Jarett, the one you and I did, go back on Abundant TV and nights 2 and 3 from the Shrine Bowl. You can see our live mock there. We sent them an interior offensive lineman center. So those are more questions to have, right? And they probably can't bring back Robert Hunt because of his contract, which, by the way, I wouldn't mind him in a Jets uniform. So these three teams, all with very small windows, having to make decisions on quarterbacks because you've paid them, right? Now you follow up with the fourth team in this division, the Patriots, sitting on an.
I forgot there was a fourth team in division.
Well,
yeah, I forgot about that.
I mean, I understand, but a few years ago we weren't forgetting about them. But yeah, they have been a bit of an afterthought these days. However, they are sitting there with the number 3 pick. They are sitting on a absolute ton of cap space available for them, and so it becomes. What are they going to be able to do to retool? What is their question at quarterback? All of that stuff. I think you're right. I think it is going to be an absolute fascinating. They're, by the way, $70 million in cap space, and that's before they cut anybody. So, I mean, that number could get up to $100 million.
That could be a big signing in quarterback. I mean, you got Russell Wilson available. Are they going to go after something like that and then look at Marvin Harrison Jr.?
Okay.
See, that's the interesting call on that because there's so much there with all the cap space.
Man, you are absolutely right. So, man, I think that is great. I think you're right, and that these are, and then just taking a step back as we look at the landscape of the NFC as a whole, right? And saying, or the AFC East, sorry, the AFC as a whole. Obviously, the Chiefs are the Chiefs and their dynasty and all of that, right? But you're hoping. Every other team is hoping for Super Bowl hangover. Yep. Baltimore is strong. Cleveland came on last year. I mean, with Joe Flacco at quarterback, what do you do with Deshaun? That's a problem for another day. However, if they get Nick Chubb back, I mean, look, that was a playoff team that was quite good. The Steelers are going to be the Steelers. They're looking to answer the quarterback question still. A lot of rumors about Justin Fields going there. And then you've got that NFC or the AFC South with a bunch of up-and-coming teams. You've got, the Colts with, Anthony Richardson coming back, and that was a team that was on the doorstep of the playoffs. You've got the Titans with Will Levis. I think they're, obviously new regime, new coach. They're gonna build around Levis and obviously the cheaper contracts, so they've got some money to spend. Gonna let some of those older vets go and see what they can do. Obviously, Jacksonville, who collapsed down the stretch last year, and now you're starting to raise those questions about, is Trevor Lawrence really the guy? So I think and then of course Houston, which C.J. Stroud steps forward, that becomes a playoff team. It looks like they're going to do nothing but get better. over the next stretch. So, man, the AFC is absolutely stacked. I don't even think I mentioned Baltimore with Lamar Jackson and what they're doing there. You're right. I mean, look, the AFC is infinitely more stacked than the NFC, and we'll talk about the NFC at a later date. But as far as a division with 3 teams with a closing window that have to win right now because you're trying to catch that groove between a dynasty team like the Chiefs and an up-and-coming team like the Texans or maybe Baltimore, you're trying to thread that needle. You're trying to get that one win in there, right? And man, that's going to be tough. And then as you say, with the Patriots and they're trying to rebuild and the loss of Belichick and seeing what that is. You're right, man. That's a good call. That's a great opening topic for one of the most fascinating divisions, and obviously a division we care a little bit about too. So.
Right. So that's one of the things I'm looking at, and you're looking at, okay, the Patriots are in rebuild mode. Okay. We all know how rebuild mode works. First thing you got to do is find a main piece for your pie. Okay. Now, is that main piece? And this is where you got to look at with them is you got to look, is their main piece? Is it going to be a draft quarterback or is it going to be a pickup in the offseason?
Yeah.
And that's where the big decision is going to come in because that's going to either really change the draft dynamic because the fact if they draft a quarterback, that's going to change where Marvin Harrison Jr. goes. Now, if they draft Marvin Harris Jr., that's going to change the whole quarterback market. That means a lot of teams are going to come up for a quarterback that is going to still be there at 4 and 5, where he wasn't supposed to be there in the prior drafts.
Yep.
Because of that.
And you're 100% correct. All right, well, let's transition away from that as we handle that topic. That was done quite well, my friend. And we will transition over to my first topic, which is going to piggyback right on where you were and what we were just talking about, which is the quarterback shuffle that we're looking at this year's in this offseason, right? So let's just run down some teams as you're looking at teams that are going to be changing quarterbacks. Washington. Definitely moving on from Sam Howell, right? The Giants, maybe? I think they'll stick with Daniel Jones. Go ahead.
Well, we're going to say something because I don't know if anyone else has seen this, but me and you have talked about it a couple times. Is the rumor on the trade about Daniel Jones?
Yeah,
that's just becoming wild.
You're not wrong, man. You're absolutely not wrong. So that's 2 with a maybe, right? Chicago obviously is going to either be changing quarterbacks. Odds everyone's saying they're going to trade Fields and go with Caleb Williams, which I think that does seem to be the prevailing thought. Minnesota, do they bring back Kirk Cousins as a stopgap? Do they go get a quarterback of the future? Do they believe in J.J. McCarthy, a guy we'll talk about in just a minute?
Well, there's a new report on that. I don't know if you saw it today.
What's that?
There is a front runner for Kirk Cousins right now.
Ooh, who's that?
The Atlanta Falcons.
Oh,
I saw that come out just a little while ago, and I didn't message it to you because I wanted to surprise you on layer with that. And I was like, that's a good topic. I was like, he may be moving.
Yeah, and he very well could. I think you look at the free agent market and the in this thing, and in fact, I'm going to pull up our good friends again here at Sport Track and pull up those free agent quarterbacks. Kirk Cousins right there at the top of the list. You've got Ryan Tannehill, Jacoby Brissett, Mitch Trubisky. They've got a lot of backup guys, but guys like what do you do with Baker Mayfield? What do you do with Drew Lock in Seattle? What do you do with Gardner Minshew in Indianapolis? Is he a really good plus backup, or is this a guy that you want to hand the reins to? Because when the quarterback carousel stops spinning, someone's going to be left without a seat. Pretty good chance. And by the way, I mentioned all these free agent quarterbacks. I didn't even mention Russell Wilson, who obviously is going to be on the move. We didn't mention Justin Fields, who's obviously going to be on the move. Also not on this list, not appearing on this list, is Mac Jones. What are the Patriots going to do with that guy? So,
well, he's gone. They already said that or reports have come out that quarterback locker room was a nightmare in the Patriots.
Yeah, no, and I think they're going to want to move on. So okay, and obviously maybe you keep Mac Jones around as a backup, but you also still have Bailey Zappi there, who seems like a great backup.
Billy Zappi, if you looked at the report in New England,
Yeah.
he did not even want to watch film in the same room as Mac Jones.
Man.
That is not going to keep that those two quarterbacks are not going to work together.
Yeah.
The other thing is you said about Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield's going to get another year to try in Tampa Bay.
I would think
Okay,
so,
Gardner
yeah.
Minshew is also going to be out of Indianapolis. They're going to find someone's going to pay him more than Indianapolis is willing to pay him for a backup.
You know what?
Indianapolis is probably going to find another quarterback, another backup quarterback they're going to use, but I think they're not going to pay him what he's going to want. This is Gardner Minshew's third time around the league?
Yeah,
finding starting and then going back out.
He's 27 years old. The projection is an annual salary of $5.3 million, and when you start looking at what teams, like I said, somebody's going to end up, missing the boat here. What team is that? What team does that become that says, "Hey, let's put down the stopgap year, right? Let's build around it." Okay, so as we mentioned, we got Washington, yes. Giants, maybe. Chicago, yes, in some way, shape, or form. Minnesota, maybe, right? So we're up to 4 there.
Falcons.
Falcons are definitely on that list. Man, New Orleans is a maybe because, boy, do they have buyer's remorse with Derek Carr, and there's a chance that, maybe that's a place where a guy like Bo Nix lands at 13.
What about Seattle?
Seattle, okay, so they're keeping Geno for one more year, but again, it's one more year, right? When do you start that? When do you start that clock going forward? So there's another great one there.
What about the Raiders?
Raiders
need somebody.
Yep, the Raiders are a team. Obviously, we talked about the Broncos. Maybe they roll with Jarrett Stidham, but they're going to want someone else in that spot as well. It looks like most of the, we talked about the AFC South being pretty set. The Browns with Deshaun Watson. I think there's been talk of, them trying to trade him. I mean, dude, I heard a crazy trade that was like Watson to the Giants for Daniel Jones,
they added a second in with Watson. So it's Watson and a second for Daniel Jones, which is kind of crazy.
This is not the first time that Cleveland has paid someone to take a quarterback off their hands. If you remember, famously the trade with the Texans where they were like, "Please just get rid of this guy," right? Man, so yeah, and obviously then we mentioned New England. I mean, there's many more. So we're talking 10 to 15. We're talking, anywhere from 30 to almost 50% of teams in the league are going to be changing their starting quarterbacks next year. Man, that is going to be wild. And then, and as you said, we've talked about several of these free agent quarterbacks, but then also you start when this happens traditionally. And the last time I could really remember it is one of the first years I covered the NFL draft, which was right after the strike year. And we're in New York City, and they're booing Roger Goodell because that's when that started. This was 2011, I believe, 2011, 2012, somewhere right in that time. And teams were desperate for quarterbacks because, of course, there was a lockout. They really didn't have any free agency. And so if you didn't have a quarterback, you didn't have a quarterback, man. So what happens? These quarterbacks start moving up the board, man. Jake Locker goes at number 10 overall to the Titans, and everybody's like, whoa, we had a second-round grade on him. 6 picks later, the Vikings take Christian Ponder, and everybody's like, whoa, we had a third-round grade on that guy. And so as a result of that draft, which, of course, for you younger listeners who don't know who Jake Locker and Christian Ponder is, there's a reason. That didn't work out real well.
But they lasted both, one season?
They didn't last many. A couple of years, mostly injuries. Yeah, it was not great. So what ended up happening, and Jarrett, you'll know this quite well, that the next year, not the next year, a couple years later, everybody was really gun-shy about quarterbacks. And they were like, man, if we reach for a quarterback and we miss, we don't want to do that. And who did that affect? Our good friend, previously mentioned, Geno Smith, who falls all the way out of the first round into the second round, and the Jets take him there. He's real bitter about it. He comes in. He plays pretty well. then goes wandering off into the desert for 5 years and finds himself in Seattle. And dude, I mean, kudos to him. He's become the vet that he needed to be. Anyway, the quarterback question is going to be fascinating. Obviously, it's what drives draft narratives. It's what drives eyeballs and all that type of stuff. It's quarterbacks to the draft are Taylor Swift to the Super Bowl, man. It drives the conversation. It drives the quarterbacks. So we're going to be spending a lot of time on that. And again, any questions that you have for us, hit us up on X at Sports Narrative. Always happy to answer your draft questions. I've started breaking down film on all of these guys, and I will say I have some different opinions than I think the average person does, but we will cross that bridge when we get there. All right. Well, that was my topic number 2. It is our topic number 1. Now on to topic number 2. Back to you.
Okay, so one thing I want to throw is a little tidbit of information real quick of something I saw.
Absolutely.
There's a person that we both talked to and really enjoyed talking to at the Shrine Bowl.
All right.
And I think we both know his father very well.
Ah, yes.
So there's a report came out today that there is a team targeting him, directly targeting him in the draft. So for y'all that don't know, it's Frank Gore Jr.
Yes.
is being targeted by the Chargers.
And by the way, on Abundant TV, you can go see our interview with Frank Gore Jr. Nice, great kid. And by the way, had a great Shrine Bowl. Ripped off a 50-yard run in the game itself. Really showed himself. Kid out of Southern Miss. Obviously he's got the pedigree. We talked about it, Jarrett, how his dad was pretty tough on him, right? Like, I mean, when your dad's top 5 all time in rushing yards, you got a standard to live up to. But he's ready to do it, and like I said, real nice kid, real coachable. Wasn't asked to catch the ball a lot at Southern Miss, but showed it at the Shrine Bowl that he can. Obviously, he's got the vision. I'm fascinated to see what he runs at the Combine. But you're right. I think there with the Chargers and obviously Jim Harbaugh, he loves his bell cow backs. A guy you would pair up because there's a lot of talk that they're going to keep Austin Eckler. And, man, I think pairing those two up would be a nice little combination for what Harbaugh wants to do, which I think is going to be, especially with them hiring, what's his name, the offensive coordinator for that was with Lamar for years, heavy run guy. So, man, I think that they're going to run the snot out of the ball, and, I think that is going to be I think that's going to be fantastic.
I think that's going to move his draft grade up, too. I mean, just watch him at the Shrine Bowl, his draft grade moved up from where everyone thought he was going to go.
100%. Totally agree. Let's see. Do I have him in the top 100 currently, which would be basically around the first 3 rounds? I don't think so.
No, you had him in round 4 or 5, Jeff.
Yeah, and I think that's where he's going to line up. Now, there are several running backs. If we want to expand this out just a little bit, looking at several of the running backs here. Okay, let me pull back up where I was just a minute ago. Sorry. Pulling up the running backs that are going to be available. There's not any real big, there's no super big stud bell cow running back. However, there are quite a few of guys that are super intriguing, from Jonathan Brooks out of Texas, recovering from the knee injury. Audric Estime out of Notre Dame, who's 6'1", 220, but runs just fast. He's quick in the hole. There's a lot to like about him. Trey Benson out of Florida State, who was the heart and soul of that run offense. Tons of really, really solid runners that I think will start coming off the board on day 2, second, third round. And then, but as you mentioned, guys like Frank Gore Jr., guys like Bucky Irving out of Oregon, these real, kind of one-trick ponies. But, man, that trick that they have is really, really good.
What do you want to – so we had him in the 4th or 5th round, I think.
Yeah.
What do you think about him going 3rd round? I can see that. I can see him going 3rd round with watching his performance at the Shrine Bowl. It all depends on what he does at the Combine, but I can see that guy going 3rd round.
By the way, Greg Roman. That's a name I couldn't think of. The offensive coordinator for the Chargers now. You know what? Look, this is the thing about the draft. Is the draft is, it morphs and changes with every pick. And you'll have a team that'll fall in love with a guy and and what they'll say is, look, if we don't take him now, we're not going to get him. Right? Like he'll be gone. Again, one of the very first drafts I ever covered, 2011. The Jacksonville Jaguars are on the clock. I believe it was I want to say it's the 8th pick in the draft, right? And in fact, I'm going to pull up this draft while I'm doing this.
Well, as you say that, I'm going to say that I have a very good vision for running backs, as you saw a couple of years ago.
That is very true. You nailed the Breece Hall being an absolute stud. I totally agree with that. So, yeah. And it's one of those things that running back is also a position that can really make an impact quickly, really, really does it well. Okay, so, nope, it wasn't that year. Okay, so 2011 was actually the Jake Locker. By the way, the Titans take Jake Locker at 8, as I just previously mentioned. The next picks were Tyron Smith for the Cowboys, then Blaine Gabbert to Jacksonville, who just won another Super Bowl ring, and then J.J. Watt right after that, and then Christian Ponder at 12, not 16. My goodness.
Yeah.
Oh, that was the one. It was at what was the other quarterback that went that year? No, I think that was later. There was you had Cam Newton at the top of that draft and Blaine Gabbert a little bit later. But man, so yes, nope, that's not it either. Dang it. I'll find it here. Anyway, the name I'm looking for is the great Tyson Alualu. There it is, 2010. That was my first draft to cover. Okay. So the draft's rolling along. It's pretty much going per standard. You look at it, you got Sam Bradford at the top of the draft, and then the next 6 guys were all, basically Pro Bowlers, really great picks. You had Rolando McClain, Gronk, Regonk, for those of you who live in Dallas, that didn't work out so well for the Raiders. C.J. Spiller then to the Buffalo Bills. And the Jacksonville Jaguars, with the 10th pick, take Tyson Alualu out of California. And in the draft room, it erupted because everybody went, wait a minute, what? What? So most people had, again, a second-round grade on this kid. However, again, when the GM of Jacksonville came up, what he said was, if we didn't take him now, we were going to get him. We really like this kid, and we couldn't trade down. Yeah, absolutely. So, man, fascinating how those things fall out sometimes. And so you're right. There's no reason if a guy, if they like a running back, every board is different. This is the other thing. When it comes to the draft, and we talk about, and you guys at home, you're going to hear us talk about, I'm going to talk about my board. We're going to talk about, other people's board, the great Dane Brugler on The Athletic, Mel Kiper, all this stuff, right? None of that matters. None of that matters. Every team evaluates differently. So if you value a certain trait or don't value a certain trait, some people, this happened last year. Some people like quarterbacks that are over 6 feet tall. Namely Frank Reich for Carolina, and he did not want Bryce Young. And so, but the owner was absolutely insistent. They took a quarterback that was too short, and it didn't work in the system, and now Frank Reich is fired. It's very funny. So every team evaluates differently. Every board is different. Nobody knows what each other's could is, and so you could sit there and say, okay, I love Frank Gore. I want Frank Gore to be on my team. I've got a 4th-round grade on him. We've got an early 4th-round pick. We should be fine. There's no worries. And then, Jarett, just as you said, the Chargers maybe trade up or with their late 3rd-round pick, take Frank Gore off the board. And now you sit there and say, uh-oh, well, the next running back I have, let's say I only have one more running back on a tier that I think it can be a starter, and I need a starter. Now I got to trade up, right? This is how the trades happen. This is how you'll see a run on a position because a couple of wide receivers will go off the board, and then they'll say, "Oh man, if we need a wide receiver, we got to go get him right now." Right? And this is why the draft is so exciting because one pick can change the entire strategy for a team. It's like the great Mike Tyson says, everybody has a plan until you get punched in the mouth. And that is exactly what that looks like. All right, back to you.
I just sitting here waiting.
Yeah, I know.
I'm letting
Sorry.
You love to commandeer the whole thing, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to let you talk for a minute. I'll send you a text going, calm down.
I get excited, man. I get excited. Okay, so
well,
you got anything else on that?
So we're going to go actually to my topic now, since I just threw a piece of information that you ran with.
Perfect.
My topic's going to be wide receivers.
All right. Well, great.
So since you took that was your second topic.
Yeah, that was my second. I went back to back. Go ahead. Now you're up.
So, and here's what I look at is I look at the free agent class of the wide receivers.
Yes, sir.
And all the stuff that's coming out. And I will point this out to you again. I talked to you stuff a week, 2 weeks ago, and now we're seeing the stuff is coming out that this is actually going to happen. You're like, oh, that's never going to happen. It's never going to happen.
No doubt.
What did I tell you? I said Tyler Lockett is going to be a free agent somehow.
Yep.
You're like, there's no way. And all of a sudden, what was it, 2 days ago I told you? It come out that he may be a salary cap casualty.
Yep. You're absolutely correct, sir.
Then we're going to talk about the other receiver that I told you that was going to be a free agent. You're like, there's no way they're going to franchise tag him. They're franchising him. You know, I love when you do that.
I know
because it just lets me look at you and go, he is now not tagged. They're tagging the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are now tagging Winfield as their safety, and that will leave Mike Evans as a free agent.
And
I mean, think about those receivers that are going to be out there. This is going to be a receiver class in the free agency that is going to be, I mean, it's going to be like a steak dinner for some of these guys. These people are going to eat. You're talking about Mike Evans is probably going to get $25 to $28 million. You're talking Tyler Lockett's probably going to get the 15 to 16 million. You got Calvin Ridley probably going to get 22. You got these players all going to make money, and they could all be top, possibly one receivers, and all of them could be number twos.
Man, you're absolutely
and that's
right.
just three receivers.
Yep. So, looking at that, and I'm going to pop you up on the screen there. There's Mike Evans, his free agent thing, again, courtesy of our friends at sporttrack.com. Projected market salary is 4 years, $95 million. He's 30 years old. So, he probably wouldn't see the last year of that deal. But, I mean, you're looking at a $23.8 million a year. And then as we
I called it 25. I mean, you're pretty close right there.
Absolutely. So now we look at these top free agents that are currently available. Now, again, as you say, Tyler Lockett has a good chance to be available on this list as well. Odell Beckham Jr., Curtis Samuel, Tyler Boyd, Cedric Wilson from Miami, Kendrick Bourne from New England, DJ Chark. And this list is going to grow, right? Like this list has the potential to be even more. In fact, this list isn't in order of importance. It's mostly in order of money. Calvin Ridley, which we thought previously might be the best wide receiver available. T. Higgins, if he hits the market, looks like he might get tagged, but that's a possibility. Michael Pittman Jr. from Indianapolis. Also, a guy that I think you could definitely view as a number 2 wide receiver overall. So, man, you're right. There's names out there, and those guys are going to get paid. So let's see. Right now, in fact, like I said, we'll stay with our good friends at Sport Track. Calvin Ridley contract projected at 4 years, $68 million, a $17 million a year annual salary.
Which is less than both of us predicted. And we've been looking at this for a while. We thought he was be over the $20 million mark. If they're counting him at 17, I mean, think about the availability of teams to put 17 million in there compared to 22.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
That's going to make him a lot bigger target for a lot more teams.
But there's also the question marks, right? Because he had kind of a down year. Wasn't the best year of years for him. So what is he, right? Like what is this guy?
I'm going to put that back on you, okay?
Yeah.
Let's look at something that just happened just recently.
Yep.
You talk about Baker Mayfield. He had a down year. Look at what he did last year.
Yeah.
Everyone has a down year every once in a while. Baker Mayfield is going to get paid this year.
See, and that's the thing. Like Baker took an $8 million cure contract, bet on himself, goes down to Tampa, absolutely does incredible, and now he's looking. I mean, look, Baker's looking somewhere between, I would say, somewhere between $30 and $40 million annual salary. Because why wouldn't he? For a starting quarterback, and the ways of the world this time, it's kind of a bargain. So I pulled up Michael Pittman there a minute ago. He's looking at like 22. It's at 22.7 for an annual salary. Here's of course T. Higgins, which we don't expect. In fact, they didn't even do a market thing on him because I don't think they expect him to hit free agency because he'll be tagged.
He's not going to. You know that.
Yeah.
You know that as well as I do. He's not going to hit.
Yeah, they actually put up like an 18.6. That's not going to happen. And I think that might be what he gets on that front. So you've got that. Now we switch gears because this is the draft narrative, and we look at the wide receivers in this draft, right? And you say, I mean, this draft is chock full of quite good wide receivers. In fact, let me pull up the wide receiver class here.
Well, you got to think about it. Look at the draft class of those receivers.
Yep.
They've got one of the best receivers that is ever going to come out of college coming up.
Yep, Marvin Harrison.
He's going to be
at the top.
Yeah, he's going to be a top 3 pick. If he's not, there's going to be teams trading for the 4th pick like there's no tomorrow. You're going to see some of the most outrageous trades. If Marvin Harris Jr. makes it the 4th pick, you're going to see some huge trades for that pick.
Well,
spot.
and this becomes the question mark, right? This becomes part of those questions at the top of the draft. So if you say, okay, well, they're going to go with Caleb Williams, all right, fine. And Washington desperately needs a quarterback, so they're going to take a quarterback, whichever one they take. And now you're the New England Patriots, right? And you say, okay, do we want to draft the 3rd quarterback here, whatever one that is? Do we want to take Marvin Harrison Jr. and take our chances? Maybe trade up later in the draft for Michael Penix or Bo Nix or something like that, right? These are legitimate questions because of the talent of Marvin Harrison Jr. being basically the number 2 overall prospect in this draft, right behind Caleb Williams. So you start saying, like, can I add more talent? But also remember that you can have all the great wide receivers in the world, but if you ain't got a quarterback to get on the ball, it don't matter, right?
That's why I said in my first topic, this was the big question.
Yep.
Do the Patriots go for the quarterback or do they go for the receiver?
100%.
And that's why I was even looking at free agent quarterbacks.
So
if Russell Wilson comes available, which we all know is more than likely going to happen, do they make a run at someone big like that?
So looking at these other wide receivers in this draft, as we just kind of break down the position, Malik Neighbors right behind Marvin Harrison Jr., just speed for days. Rome Odunze, we saw what he did in the championship games and the semifinals against Texas. He's a top 10 receiver. Brian Thomas Jr., a little bit. I've seen evaluations of him all over the board. Some people love him, some people don't. It'll be interesting to see how he runs. But that's 5 wide receivers there, counting Keon Coleman out of Florida State.
Hold on.
In the first
You're
round.
going top 5. We got to go farther in this draft. There's receivers that me and you have talked about that they're saying they're 5th-round picks. I'm going to go with Malik Washington, Taj Washington. Look at the way those guys played.
Absolutely.
Those receivers back in that far in the draft, those players are going to be amazing for receivers in the NFL.
Look, so as you mentioned, that's 5 wide receivers just in the first round, right? Now if I pull up the rest of this list, Ladd McConkey, Adonai Mitchell, Troy Franklin, Roman Wilson, Xavier Worthy, Malachi Corley, Jalen Polk, Devontae Walker. That's another, 7? And that's just the second round. So we're through 2 rounds. We've had 12 receivers go off the board. Now, as we keep going down that list, you're looking at, and so you got Jalen McMillan, which is the last of those Washington receivers at 65, and then there's a gap, right? And the gap now drops you well into the 3rd round. So if you got to get a receiver, as that list starts getting picked over, right? As you start, if you're sitting there saying, okay, I'm the Chiefs. I took an offensive lineman in the first round. I need a wide receiver. I'm sitting at 64 at the end of the 2nd round. I'm watching these picks come off. At what point do I start getting itchy, man? What point do I start getting nervous and say, by the time we get there, there may be no receivers left. We got to move up and get Tez Walker. We got to move up to get Jalen Polk, right? So, man, I think that gets really fascinating. And then, as you said, the back half of the draft. Ricky Pearsall out of Florida, who's great. Xavier Leggett out of South Carolina, who's a big kid, 6'1", 223, big monster physical receiver. And then Brendan Rice, the son of Jerry Rice, who comes in at the end of that top 100. But as you said, there's also guys later. There's Malik Washington just outside the top 100 currently, who could be an absolute steal of a wide receiver, starting slot guy from day one in the fourth round. There's Taj Washington, who was the go-to guy. Again, another little bit of a slot guy, but that's just it's always a position of need. Everybody always needs a wide receiver because of injuries and everything else. And so, yeah, I think that I think that's going to be a fun topic to look at. And here's the best part, that you're going to get to watch the scouting combine live with us here, live on Abundant TV. We're going to live stream us, Jarett, myself, and Darren, sitting here right here in the man cave that I'm at right now with my dogs. And we're going to basically, you'll watch us watch it and watch the quarterbacks and the wide receivers go out there. So it's on March 2nd. I believe it starts at noon. Please join us here on Abundant TV. I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Well, now I'm going to add the one part of that subject I really want to talk about for receivers.
All right.
There's two players that you talked to in the draft, and those two players have the same last name.
Yeah.
Now, it's going to be interesting because they've played together since, what is it, Pee Wee football? Even in college.
Oh.
There's a chance they get drafted by two different teams. Do we have another Jason Kelsey, Travis Kelsey story here?
You might have it even better than that. You might have, you're talking about twin brothers.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the two kids from South Dakota State, the Yankee brothers, because I said it right this time. Jaden and Jackson.
That's why I made you say it. See if you did it.
Yeah, so the Yankee brothers, who we also got a nice interview with. Kids that have played together their entire lives, might get drafted by different teams. Man, that's going to be a fascinating story too. And what's interesting about them is usually when you see twins, usually there's one that's a little bit better than the other one. Like it's just kind of how it works. But with those two guys, man, they're both very similar. I fully expect both of them to be, day 3 picks that are going to be absolutely fun to watch. And had a great career at South Dakota State, won themselves a few back-to-back trophies, and now we'll see if they can carry that to the NFL.
And they're built exactly the same. That is the strangest part.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right. Well,
now time for your third subject.
All right, time for topic number 3 for myself. As
make it interesting. We don't want to bore these people for the next 20 minutes.
No, we're definitely going to. Okay, so here's where I want to go with this one, which is a place we haven't talked about yet. So, of the Dane Brugler top 50, which I am currently scrolling my way through, I did a count the other day. 39 of the top 50 players in his evaluation thus far, now obviously these subject to change, are offensive players. This is not a great defensive player draft. There is no, superstar, stud, Myles Garrett guy at the top of this draft. Now, there's some really good players. Don't get me wrong. But, this is a draft where the defense is going to be a little bit on the back foot. In fact, as I scroll this list, I'm going to pull it up here for you guys.
Well, what was the one thing we've been talking about ever since we started doing the draft coverage? There's not a linebacker that we can see going in the first round.
Right, and this also goes to position, a topic for another day, but position evaluation and how we've seen running backs and linebackers tend to slide because they're impact positions, their longevity as a position group doesn't last as long. Safeties also fall into this group where you just don't see a whole lot of top flight safeties. But okay, so defensive players. As I pull this back up, this is again Dane Brugler's top 100, courtesy of The Athletic. You've got a couple of corners, 1, 2. You got Dallas Turner, pass rusher. That's 3. Byron Murphy, the Texas defensive tackle, is 4. Again, scrolling. Jarett Verse, defensive end from Florida State, who was, man, absolutely a stud there. That's 5. Cooper DeJean, the cornerback / safety out of Iowa. How many was that? Was that 5? Nate Wiggins, 6. Chop Robinson, 7. And Kool-Aid McKistry, which I think is Jarrett's favorite player, Kool-Aid. Newton, Darius
Gotta
Robinson.
have that Kool-Aid, man.
That's right. Darius Robinson, who jumped up at the Senior Bowl and I think has put himself in the first round grades. So, that, like I said, all that right there at the very end, at the top of the second round, you've got Tavondre Sweat. And again, so I'm all the way down. There's your first linebacker, Junior Colson out of Michigan, a guy who's also been coming on a lot recently. The second linebacker, Edgerrin Cooper, Tyler Nubin, safety. But, man, it is a very thin draft for real impact defensive players. What does that mean? What I think that means is I think those guys are going to end up climbing. I think if we start seeing a run on cornerbacks, per se, right, that there's a chance that they'll say, man, if I need a starting cornerback, this position runs out. There's not like there's guys that are starters that we have on this tier, and then after that, man, it starts to run out. And so that, I think, is going to be fascinating to see exactly how the defensive players come off the board, if there's a run at it at some point, or if it's something that slides and everybody just grabs all the offensive talent they can get. And then when you get to the top of the second round, man, there's going to be defenders galore that you can really do some damage with.
Well, here's what I look at. We talked about this earlier in my first subject when we talked about the AFC East. You got the Buffalo Bills with an aging defense, right?
Yes, sir.
How much are they willing to look up and jump up there to grab the players faster because they got the aging defense? They're going to start losing players.
Yeah.
You look at these teams that have the older defenses with drafts like this, and they're going to be struggling. They may be struggling with injuries, stuff like that.
Agreed.
These players are not going to be available where some of those teams are listed. So what's going to happen is you're going to see a run. I mean, a run in free agency on defensive players actually looking at the draft.
Yeah, and I kind of
Just
agree. Yeah. Sorry.
And at that point, no problem. At that point, when you see that, is you're going to see people going, okay, now we got to move our draft boards. We've got our backup. Can we draft someone that will actually take that position, or do we need to find somebody? I think you're going to see defensive players like we did this year, picked up all the way. What was it? Third week is one of the defensive players were picked up.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen it in the past too.
Yeah, you are absolutely, you nailed it. I think that's going to be fun to watch, just how those defensive players come off the board. All right, subject 3. Let's finish strong there, Jarett. You have the floor for the final topic.
Okay, so I've been thinking about this topic. It's a topic I would love to talk about, and I think it'd be more fun if someone else was here. But I think because of the fact it would be kind of harassing them. But I actually think, and this is a team that I think is very interesting to talk about. And me and you have talked about it a couple times.
Yep.
And there's 2 ways of this team going. And I'll say the name right now. We're going to talk about it. We're in Dallas. We know what this team is. Everyone talks about this team around here. It's the Dallas Cowboys.
Yes, sir.
And I think they're in a very interesting spot. We talked about windows closing. We talked about draft. We talked about everything. Okay?
Yep.
They may lose some very big pieces with losing Dan Quinn. They're going to probably lose Kirsch, their safety. And it all depends on what happens. Micah Parsons may request a trade from this team. Depends on what they say they're going to use him as.
So you're looking at the screen right now at the R-Lads 2 deep depth chart, and all the players that you see in orange are all free agents. And, man, you see them dotted all over. Tyron Smith, starting left tackle. Tyler Biotish, the starting center. Both starting running backs, Tony Pollard and Rico Dowdle, are free. Jonathan Hankins, who absolutely anchored the nose tackle under Dan Quinn. As you mentioned, Jaron Kearse, the safety. Jordan Lewis, their starting nickel corner. Stephon Gilmore is free, as he was, there for Trayvon Diggs. Dorrance Armstrong, we saw him make some great plays during the season. So yeah, I think that the Cowboys have a lot of answers, or a lot of questions to answer, and with the transition away from Dan Quinn to Mike Zimmer, which, as you well know, Jarrett, I think is a very positive move. But we'll chop that up on another day.
Well, that's positive for the coaching thing. Now, how's that going to affect the players?
Right.
That's what we don't know yet.
Yeah, and not to mention the fact that they're a little bit over the salary cap, and they've got some moves to make there as well. So yeah, man, I think that is going to be a whole lot of fun trying to figure out what this Cowboys team can do. Do they let Tyron Smith walk, make that change, draft a tackle in the first round, a guy
They
like
let the center walk.
right? Do you let the center walk? Do you bring in a guy there? Man, a lot of big questions.
Look who's got to get paid on that team.
Yeah.
Look at the players that have to be paid on that team. You're talking CD Lamb.
Yep.
You're talking about Dak Prescott. You're talking there's a lot of money that's going to be coming out on that team.
Yeah, that absolutely. You are 100% correct there, and that is, in fact, I lost my Sport Track page, but, they're like I said, they've got big money that needs to go out for them as well, and, that is something that I think is going to be. Let me pull this up here with the good old Cowboys here and see what they've got, salary cap wise. As you just look at their salary cap. Again, Dak Prescott's hitting your cap right now at $60 million. Well, that's not going to last. They're going to spread that out. Zach Martin's hitting your cap at $28 million. Are you gonna keep that around? CD Lamb in his last year of his deal at 17 mil. You would think an extension's coming there. By the way, they're 14 million over the cap right now, which again, like 3 moves and that's gone. So like literally, that's not really an issue. But
But with the players that are free agents for him, to sign all those and keep that team together, I like the defensive move. Me and you both know that I'm not the biggest advocate for the Cowboys.
Yep.
But I will say this. They have a lot of moves that are going to happen in this offseason, and this will determine the next 3 years of the Cowboys. Because everyone says they're always Super Bowl bound.
Yep.
Well, this is where they're going to prove they are or they're not.
Yeah.
Because of the fact with losing Dan Quinn, they're going to lose some defensive pieces to him. They've already lost some coaching people.
Yeah,
it's revamped.
Agreed, and as we know with Jerry, Jerry's getting up there in years. He's trying everything he can. He's trying to get rid of the curse of Jimmy by putting him in the Ring of Honor. He is doing everything he can do to try to bring a winner home before he gets called home to wherever, right? And that's the thing is this team has run on such a win now, mentality of reloading, and now you're starting to see some of those guys like Tyron Smith, like Zach Martin, age out a little bit, and so. The window, we talked about windows. That's how this show started. We're talking about that Cowboys window. How much longer do you have on it, right? You've already had to pay Dak, so that's there, right? You've got CD Lamb coming up. Micah Parsons is going to be due a absolute ton of money when the time comes. In fact, his market value is at least $25 million. I bet you that'll get north of that.
I think it's 28.
Yeah,
is what I saw.
I think it's going to be well north of that by the time we actually get there. So there's big money that's going to be outlaid. They
have no running back.
Yeah, they got
Tony Pollard has been playing for him, but I think you agree with this, Jeff. He is not a pure starting running back in the NFL.
No, I completely agree with you. So yeah, I think that. And I think he's going to be fine in a tandem, and I think he would be a good kind of third down back for a team. But he's not that kind of starter. So man, you're right. The Cowboys are going to be a fun team to watch. We'll obviously keep up with them. And again, if your personal team, a team that you love, is out there, please feel free to hit us up, ask us questions. We're going to get to every team at some point during this draft process. We will literally talk about every team, and not from the big national perspective of, like I'm ESPN and here's what I think they need. No. One of the things that I think I strive to do here on the draft narrative, courtesy of the 24 media, is go and read the local beat writers. Go and read the local people so that you're getting it from the local perspective. What the team thinks about themselves, not what ESPN or NFL Network or any of those people think about the team. I think that
Well,
makes
you forgot
a huge difference.
the one thing you got to say, Jeff, is we do our own research too. We look at that. We actually research the team. So here's what I challenge you guys that are watching this to do. I challenge you to do this in the next 7 days. I want you to send your team in with a question you have about the team.
Yeah.
Next time at air, we will answer it. We'll look at it. I'll do my research. Jeff will do his research. We'll do it together. We'll figure it out because you guys don't know this, but me and Jeff probably talk 2 hours a day talking just football.
No doubt. There ain't no doubt about it. So, uh, thesportsnarrative@gmail. It's my personal email. I will happily answer all of your questions. Also, find me on Twitter at Sports Narrative. And let me put that up on the screen there, so you can find that there. Any questions you got, any draft questions, questions about how I got into this, what we do, our background in football, all that stuff. I've been covering the draft now for this will be 15 years officially.
God, you're old.
Oh man, tell me about it. Look at the gray in this beard. And you look like Obi-Wan Kenobi over there, so it's great. Like we're a couple old Jedis just getting this thing done. Exactly. Oh, there it is. There's Obi-Wan coming at me, or perhaps a Ukrainian refugee. I'm not sure which. But yeah, good times. So yes, for the great Obi-Wan Kenobi of the draft, and I am Qui-Gon Jinn. We will join you again very soon. So please enjoy all of our draft coverage. We'll join you again this week. We've got another great boxing show that's coming out later in the day, later this week on the 24 Media. So please check all that out. Give us a follow, give us a like, share it with all your friends. Until that time, have a wonderful week. Jarett, got any closing thoughts?
Have a good day, people. And like I said, remember, I challenged you. I'd like to see at least 5 questions in that inbox.
There it is. The challenge, the gauntlet is thrown down, ladies and gentlemen. Let's make it happen here on the thing that we call the Draft Narrative Show.